as we can. Okay, so we're going to start the meeting with the public hearing agenda, and I'm going to call upon the Director of Administration to the corporate officer to introduce the public hearing process and the first item on the agenda, which is BYLAW 201805071730wv300en. Mrs. Kaler, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Local Government Act requires that a public hearing be held before Council adopts an amendment to a zoning or official community plan bylaw. Can't turn it off. I don't think so.
This is a regular meeting of Council. There's no further speakers. This is not a public hearing on 22 Corefield tonight. We'll have to speak as loud as we can. The acoustics isn't the best at any time in this okay. Council chambers.
I will try to
speak up. Speak really close to the microphone.
Okay. At this public hearing, all persons who deem their interest in property affected by a proposed bylaw shall be afforded an opportunity to be heard on matters contained within the bylaw. Anyone wishing to be heard on the bylaw amendment must come to the microphone at the appropriate time and clearly state their name and civic address. Council members request that speakers restrict discussion to the application on hand, which is the proposed use of land within the City of Parksville. Members of Council may ask questions of persons after they have made their presentation. However, the main function of Council members this evening is to listen to presentations and not to engage in debate. Whether you are for or against the bylaw, during the course of the public hearing, Council would ask that you not display any outbursts as a courtesy to all present here this evening. No presentations or submissions will be received by Council on the application after the motion for termination of this public hearing has been adopted. Lastly, when a public hearing item has been terminated, Council requests those persons wishing to leave the Council chambers do so in a quiet and orderly manner in order that Council may continue with its business and move to the next item on the agenda. This evening there is one item on the public hearing agenda. It is Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw number 2018 number 2000.114. This bylaw proposes to amend the City of Parksville Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 1994 number 2000. In general terms, the purpose of the proposed amendment is to temporarily prohibit non-medicinal cannabis-related activities in the City of Parksville. This interim measure will allow Council to design a regulatory framework for the City that takes into consideration the results of the recent public engagement survey and recommendations from staff on a tailored approach to cannabis legalization. As of 4 p.m. on May 7th, 2018, no correspondence has been received in response to this bylaw amendment.
So for the first time, I'd like to invite anyone who'd like to speak to come forward to the microphone and give their name and civic address for the record with regards to the bylaw 2018 number 2000.114 for the first time. Seeing no one, for the second time, I'd like to invite anyone who would like to speak to come forward to the microphone. Again, with regards to bylaw 2018 number 2000.114. Nobody wants to talk about marijuana, okay. For a third and final time, I'd like to invite anyone who would like to speak to come forward on bylaw 2000.114. Would you please come forward? On bylaw 2000.114. So your name and civic address, please. Oh, into the microphone. Nobody's going to hear you.
Thank you. Sorry. We weren't quite prepared to come and sit down and talk with you. My name is Maura Reeves. This is my husband, Simon. We are wondering if...
Speak right up close to the microphone.
We are at 714 Ironwood Avenue here in Parksville. We've been resident in Parksville for 3 years, and we are in the process of looking at the prospect of opening a cannabis retail. We're wondering if you can tell us more about the zoning bylaws, because what we've read that was sent to us by Sarah, thank you, is a little confusing, and we're not sure where this is all sitting right now.
We are preparing for that, but we're waiting on the federal government to make it legal. The last, we all attended the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities Conference in Victoria a couple of weeks ago, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen before the month of August, perhaps even the month of September. So when that time comes, we'll be ready with a bylaw that we'll be able to produce for everyone who wants to sell cannabis, whether medical or recreational. Is that correct, Mrs. Kaler? Want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the person asking the question. The city has presented this interim measure so that we have time to prepare for the legalization. We have an internal task force that has been meeting to review the results of the public engagement and also to look at what is available from the senior levels of government at this point in time. There is some information that we are basing our recommendations to council on. There is a licensing program that the provincial government has announced, and we expect to bring a report with options for council's consideration in June or July, depending on mayor's approval of the agenda for those meetings.
And I believe the conference last week in Ottawa of the Assembly of First Nations, they've put forward a motion to the federal government to wait for a year. So I don't know where that's going to go, but I suffice to say it's up in the air. I'd be very surprised if we see anything between now and, say, September. So when that is announced and that comes forward, we'll be ready as a municipality.
So the zoning bylaw that was going to be looked at this evening, is that still going to be addressed, or is that going to be on hold for an indefinite period of time?
Mrs. Kaler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight's public hearing is to temporarily prohibit cannabis activities under the zoning bylaw until we come back to council with some recommendations for their consideration. That will have options for new wording in the bylaw or new definitions, things of that nature. And we anticipate that council will provide direction as to which particular zones cannabis retail will be permitted in and what other types of regulations through business licensing and inspections and things of that nature. So we, as I mentioned, will be bringing some of those options before council in June or July, depending on the sequencing of reports. Our mayor approves the agenda items, so it'll be one of those 4 meetings, and we publish our agendas the week before, so anybody who is interested would be encouraged to keep an eye on our website so that they can see when the reports are coming forward.
Okay, so is there any indication of what the licensing fees will be when this comes through, or is that on hold at the moment as well?
Pardon me? Go ahead.
The entire regulatory framework is intended to be presented to council in that report, so that would be everything that the city has authorization or jurisdiction to regulate. So it would include fees, inspection requirements, business licensing, zoning, everything basically associated with that use in the City of Parksville.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience and
Thank you.
hearing us.
If I might jump in on this here, I think that the reason I understand why this temporary measure is come into place is that we as a council do not support the illegal activity of non-medical marijuana. And that's the reason why we didn't want the shops setting up here until such time as it became legal. When that happens, the temporary measures that in place shouldn't be interpreted as the future direction of the city. We just want to, once it's legalized, we will be coming forward with a fair and reasonable set of regulations that I don't believe will be out of line with many other jurisdictions, if that helps.
It does help. Absolutely.
Okay, for a third and final time, I invite anyone to like to come forward and speak to bylaw 2000.114. Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to ask for a motion to terminate the public hearing for zoning and development amendment bylaw 2018, number 2000-114. Moved by Councillor Beal, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? I'd like to advise the public that once the public hearing is adjourned, Council cannot entertain further submissions or correspondence from the public on the proposed bylaws. Now I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn the public hearing. Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Beal. All those in favor? Thank you. We are adjourned. Okay, good evening once again, everyone, and welcome to the May 7th